Welcome back to Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. I'm personal financial planner, columnist, and financial therapist Rick Kaler. Research tells us that 90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally, not logically. For nearly 4 decades, I've been helping people make better money decisions. So what makes my financial worldview different from most financial experts? I blend the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Good money decisions are not just about the money. So let's get started with today's episode. Welcome back for another edition. I kind of ran into this today. It's nothing I ever thought about talking about, and yet it's really a big topic and one that I don't know if we understand what we mean when we say it. And this is the idea of emotional intelligence. Now, I ran into this because I was looking at the 5 things that we, I think there are more than 5. There's probably about 7 things that we have in our code of conduct in our company that are big mistakes. And these are things that could lead to transitioning someone out of the company. And those are covering up a mistake, breaking an agreement, blaming others and making excuses, engaging in chronic communication issues. That's like insincerity or triangulation, having an attitude that certain tasks like getting coffee for a client or a coworker or cleaning are beneath you, wasting time and company resources. And then here's the one that caught my attention: displaying chronically low emotional intelligence. And we say very briefly, this impairs our ability to build purposeful relationships and live a balanced life. But there's a mouthful there. What is chronically low emotional intelligence? And probably even more important, how do I know? I mean, it's kind of like, remember back in the day that we would tell somebody, quit being so insecure. You're insecure. Okay. How do I do that? Is there an emotional switch within me that I flip and go, oh, great, I am no longer emotionally insecure? It's a huge topic. So I have done a piece, written a column on these big mistakes and how they relate to money. And we know, if you're a listener of this podcast for any period of time, we know that a low emotional intelligence is anathema to making good financial decisions, right? I mean, 90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally. If we don't have emotional intelligence, how are we going to have financial intelligence? And probably some of you that are new to the podcast are bristling at that a little bit, like, come on, this is about math. No, what math is a part of it, but math is not the big part of it. So how do I know? What are signs that I might have low emotional intelligence that is going to correlate to my financial well-being? And certainly it will correlate to my emotional well-being. But how do I spot this? Again, I remember a study that said, I think it was 78% of all successful CEOs score very high in emotional intelligence. So this is a big deal. So I did a little research and I came up with 10 different signs that can point to recognizing emotional intelligence or a lack of emotional intelligence. And the first one, so I'm going to focus on the negative, and I do apologize for that. And sometimes that's what my personality does. So I'm talking about how to figure out if you don't have this. And then obviously to get it is the opposite. The first one is a difficulty in recognizing emotions. This is a big one, and that's identifying and understanding your own emotions. And that might be more important than the emotions of others. It might come first. I don't think this is a chicken or the egg. I think a person needs to be able to understand their own emotions before they're going to be dialed in to the emotions of others. So how do I spot that? Well, let me take you back to me. Gee, what age would that have been at? I don't know. Let's just say mid-30s. And my idea of success was not having feelings, not being fearful in the context of my religion at the time. That was a sign of weakness if I had fear. Not being sad because that was a sign of not having faith. Certainly not being angry, just not feeling. I suppose it was okay to have joy, but that was about it. Other certainly any difficult feeling was off the table, and it was a success if I could flatline, which I learned later means numbing out. So if you don't recognize emotions, or you think emotions are bad, that's a sign. That's a sign that you are struggling in this area of emotional intelligence. And I truly thought that these emotions were a sign of weakness and very negative, because put together people don't have difficult emotions. So that's one way, is if you just don't know what you're feeling. Somebody could ask you, what are you feeling? I don't know. I'm not feeling anything. Oh, it could be true that you're not having an emotional response to something, but oftentimes we're having an emotional response, and we are so used to numbing that out, we can't identify it. So if that's something you use a lot, that's probably an identifier. Next would be a lack of empathy. So if you find it hard to empathize with others, or you find it hard to understand their perspectives, really putting yourself into their shoes and how this, whatever this is, can be making them feel. This is really important, because a lack of empathy, which is a little different from reading the emotions of another person, which, by the way, I didn't mention. I've seen several studies that we can't read emotions in others as well as we think we can. It's kind of fascinating, and that's why I really spent more time on being aware of your emotions. A lack of empathy can show up as a lack of sensitivity to others' feelings. Or what's a lack of sensitivity? Being dismissive of their emotional experiences, discounting, minimizing the feelings of others. If you're somebody that often finds people being too sensitive, this person's too sensitive, you're too sensitive. If that's something that you find yourself saying a lot, or you would have a part of you that looks down upon somebody that is sensitive, rather than celebrate their sensitivity, that is a sign. I could never understand, why would you celebrate somebody's sensitivity? Of course, that's a weakness. So that can be a sign, is a lack of empathy. As you can see, as we're going through these, so far I'm 2 for 2. We'll see how we keep going. The third one are poor relationships. You just really struggle in maintaining healthy relationships. And that word healthy can throw us for a loop, because what is healthy? What's a healthy relationship with money look like? I think I did a podcast on that. If I didn't, that would be a good one. We talk a lot about the negatives around what a poor relationship with money looks like. But what does a healthy relationship with money look like? And so here, what's a healthy relationship with another human being look like? You could say, well, a healthy relationship is I'm liked by my buddies at the gym, or on a softball team, or something like that. I think part of a healthy relationship is the ability to be vulnerable, which could be really hard to relate to what that is if you struggle in this area. So frequent conflicts, if you have frequent conflicts with friends or in relationships, frequent misunderstandings, just maybe nobody that you really have a deep connection with. And this is something that we've talked about, that is a driver in so many things that we do. And in the money decisions that we make, is that desire for connection. And we may try, but never achieve that. Maybe we have problems managing emotions with other people. I just recently had a student in a class that just prided herself on being frank, being brutally frank. Well, if you pride yourself on being brutally frank, this is probably a red flag. Honesty, transparency is not the same as brutal frankness. So, do you have poor relationships? Certainly in the past, I had poor relationships. Struggling with emotional regulation. So this is like we just talked about in managing emotions. If you do have trouble managing your emotions, and what does that mean? Typically, when you think of anger management, it would come in there. It would be frequent outbursts, pretty big mood swings, difficulty in calming yourself down when you're upset, just regulating yourself. Now this can be the opposite of numbing out, right? So the goal isn't to go to the other extreme and just be emotionally unregulated. So this would be doing things that would often not be called for in societal norms. Yeah, I don't know, you're in a speech and you want to stand up and tell the speaker he's an idiot. That's something to keep to yourself and ponder, rather than probably disrupting a whatever it is, and at an inappropriate time saying something like that. So this is another sign of difficulty with emotional intelligence. Another one, difficulty in handling criticism. Oh, now I would say, as I'm ticking these off for myself, starting with emotional regulation, I didn't do that. Because I was so shut down, and to some degree still am, but so shut down, I had no problem regulating myself emotionally. In fact, it swung the other way. So that one I didn't relate to. The difficulty handling criticism. Oh, yeah. If you react defensively or with hostility to feedback or criticism, it can be a sign of low EQ. And people with high EQ can let it roll off their back. They're better able to take criticism as information and not immediately take it personally. And I haven't talked a lot about the Enneagram on podcasts. Someday I may like to do that and go through it. But I tend to fixate around a type 1. There's 9 types. And the Enneagram is a self-development tool. It's just not a stereotyping of personality. And with the type 1, one of their basic fears is that they're defective. And there's nothing that can touch them more deeply than criticism, which is taken as a sign, prima facie evidence that they're defective. And this is something that I struggle with. I struggle with to this day, and have done a lot of interior work around it, and have a lot of interior work left to go. So, and this shows up in your money. Financial planner is telling you to do something, or somebody's giving you some information and it's immediately taken as criticism, when it can be delivered in a way without shame, without judgment, and immediately spun into criticism. So this is something to be really aware of in your money management. It's just in all things dealing with people, but especially in tying it to money. You may have a really hard time making progress because everything is taken in as criticism, judgment, and shame. And yes, criticism can be handled in a real gentle, loving, and with really good intentions. And I don't mean brutal frankness, really good intentions. I mean really good intentions of being helpful. Number 6 is a limited self-awareness. Okay, now this is a tough one. It's a sign of not having emotional intelligence. It's a sign that I could struggle with good financial decisions. And yet this is like, you don't know what you don't know. I lack self-awareness. How do I know that I'm not self-aware? And self-awareness is huge in building emotional intelligence. We've got to find out what it is we don't know. So you can see this as what areas in your life don't you fully understand? Something that's happening, or you don't. How about if I asked you, what are your strengths? What strengths do you have? Can you give me a list of 10? Or is that in the numbing out category of, oh, gee, ooh, man, I don't know that I have any strengths? That would be, quite frankly, a very typical response. What strengths do you have in your money management or in how you do money? None. There's some there. Now, weaknesses. How about your self-awareness and weaknesses? Now, oftentimes we can nail those. Now, not everybody. Certainly, my personality can list the weaknesses out like crazy, but you might have another personality like maybe the Enneagram type 8 that would have a real hard time finding weaknesses. But they can find the strengths, no problems. Or being aware of how your behavior affects others. If you're clueless about that, ask people. That's hard. That's hard. But all of that can help start raising self-awareness. The seventh one is poor conflict resolution skills. So if you find it really challenging to resolve conflicts or things escalate into disagreements, certainly this can be around money. It can be around wages. It can be with your partner. Just can't resolve conflicts. It's going to show up in your money. So that's going to be kind of combined in managing emotions and understanding the emotions of other people. I know when I first got into recovery 35 years ago, it was amazing to me that people could resolve conflicts. To me, conflicts were never resolved. And so that certainly I checked the box in that one. Number 8 is struggling to read social cues. In the Enneagram, there's 3 instincts, basic instincts, and one of them is social. And that's the ability to walk in the room and know who's talking to who's left out, where the power group is, just everything that's going on socially in the room. That's not my forte. When I walk into a room, I'm more instinct self-preservation. And I'm going to know, is it hot? Is it cold? Where's the food? Where's the bathrooms? Where's the exits? I'm going to be clueless socially. So if you have trouble interpreting body language, like what body language? No, or someone's tone of voice or facial expressions, this can be a sign of low intelligence emotionally. And I said there's some research stating that we can't just equate a certain, quote, look of somebody. Like if you take a page of faces and ask what each one's feeling, what could be anger in one of those pictures may not be anger at all. So it's better to do this with real people because then there's a lot more things, a lot of body language, that tone of voice that we can pick up to read social cues. I know this is something that I've been clueless to, especially say with public speaking. It's just flip the switch, a little Energizer bunny gets up there and delivers the speech and is completely oblivious that everybody's sleeping. Hard to read the room, a problem with that. 9 is the inability to handle stress. So if you often feel overwhelmed by stress, you have a lot of difficulty coping with pressure, this again could be low EQ. This could have a lot to do with your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. And that's a pretty deep topic. Well, let's just say when you're really stressed, the your EQ probably is going down, is being affected. And finally, rigid thinking and behavior. So people with low EQ could find it really hard to adapt or change to accept different perspectives. Again, seeing it from the other person's view, being able to step into their skin and understand, have that empathy. And they could also struggle with flexibility in their own thinking and behavior. And this is something that I definitely can check that box. Again, back to the Enneagram Type 1, who is called the reformer. Does that give you a clue about rigid thinking? Type 1s absolutely can think they're the only person in the room that has it right. And that can be a problem. So, going through this, as you can see, I checked a lot of these boxes in my past. I have spent a lot of money building EQ, and I have quite a ways to go in several of these. But these are also important. If you see yourself in any of these, it's a sign that maybe you're not making as sound of financial decisions, whether it's in your employment, it's in your personal money management, it's in your relationship, it's in decisions you're making about estate planning, insurance, in your investments. It will affect all of this. So I hope that this has been helpful to you, and maybe can give you some things to start being curious about. Emotional intelligence. I mean, you're not done if you're in this. All of this can be developed and improved with practice and raising self-awareness, going to workshops and various types of coaching and therapy, mindfulness, getting feedback from other people, practicing role playing in workshops. All of this can help build emotional intelligence. So thanks again for joining me. If you have a question, please email me at rick@rickkaler.com. Take a look at the website, advancedwellbeing.com. If you have those questions, you need some help or guidance, please reach out to me. So I look forward to speaking with you again next week. Thanks for joining me, Rick Kaler, for another episode of Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. This is where I combine the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Remember, every financial behavior, whether it appears illogical to you or others, makes perfect sense when we understand the underlying beliefs, feelings, and thoughts. Sign up for my weekly blog at financialawakenings.com. I hope you'll join me again for our next episode.